Today is about bringing all of our knowledge together before we bring in new material. Yesterday we did start to do refresher on function notation, and that refresher will actually come into play today. Does this scenario look familiar? It doesn't? Yeah, it should. It's the first one we did when we started this topic. I did change up the pictures because there were a couple things we had talked about and I wanted to show you. So this came from a diving school's website about what happens when people dive and why the bends, we talked about divers who get the bends, what actually happens in their body. So if you're interested in science, this is the science behind why that happens to them. And then I had also mentioned divers who come up too fast. They don't give their blood time to acclimate to that pressure. They have to be immediately put in a hyperbaric chamber, and that's what this looks like. It's literally this giant metal container that they change the pressure to be at the depth that they came up too fast from, and then they change the pressure to imitate what the diver should have done by coming up gradually. So this is a diver who came up too fast. He's chilling reading a magazine until the machine is done doing its job. So let's talk about what we do first. As you were reading this, did anybody start off by doing something? Or do we need another minute to start? Let me give you 30 seconds and I'm going to watch what you do as you read, and we'll see if you do what I think you're about to do. What have we been doing as we read? True. We're going to save the highlighters for a second. Let's use a pencil. What are we going to do with that pencil? Good. Underline what? We've been putting the function in a box, so we can do that. Let's put the function in a box. He is on the right track with underlining. What do we typically look for and underline? Yes, very good. The independent and dependent variables. Do we see anywhere where that's been defined for us? I heard it. Just say a little louder. Yes? What do you see? So remember, no numbers when we're defining variables. I'm looking for something like, if this was about money, the cost C, or Myri sees it? That is involved here. I'm looking for an italicized variable somewhere in the middle. Lucas? Also being measured, but it's not assigned to a variable. D depth, right here. Depth D. So when I say look for variables in here, to clarify, I'm literally looking for the scenario telling me what the variable is. So D is depth. How is this being measured? How is depth being measured? How do you know it's feet? Yes, this is talking about feet. Somewhere else it tells me about feet. So that's how I know. Don't get thrown off by the pounds per square inch. That's connected to how atmospheres work. Everything else here is talking about feet. Awesome. But I don't see anywhere where it tells me P of D is this. So what does P of D represent? What is this? It can't be nothing. What is this whole question talking about? Pressure. Water pressure. And how is water pressure being measured? It's that word some people were throwing around before. Atmospheres. So right now what I write, you write, okay? If you have a question, please let me know. Atmospheres. Horrible spelling. Let me try that again. Smartboard got me. Atmospheres. Alright, very good. That is going to be what we write first at the bottom. So again, what you see at the bottom is my effort to provide an order to how we approach this. Because on the quizzes, I really saw a group got this far, and a group got this far, and a group got this far. So I'm trying to help you surpass wherever you got stuck. So the first step, always, read for information. Highlight this box, please, with your highlighter. I want that to stand out. Read for information. And as part of that, we are going to make sure that we underline. If you don't have a highlighter, you can share with the person sitting next to you. Underline defined variables if they're there, because sometimes they're not, right? Like in this one, only one of them was there. And then what did you do with the equation? So we're going to underline defined variables if they're there. Like in this case, D depth was given. We had to kind of reason on what the other was. And we had an equation, so we boxed it. Did we define our variables already? Yes, so please highlight define variables. But as part of defining variables, please put and write the units, and I'll talk about what that is in a second. Write the units above domain and range. Write the units above domain and range. Yes, highlight the define variables. And if you want to also highlight write the units, that's okay too. We'll remind you of what these values mean. In the real world. So again, what I put in a box, I would like you to highlight because I want it to stand out to you, please. Now, what do I mean by this piece here? Write the unit above domain and range. If I'm asking you to find domain and range, somewhere I'm going to put domain and a blank and range and a blank. So above domain, how is domain being measured? It is depth, but what's the units? Feet. That's what I mean by units. How is it being measured? So above domain, I'm going to write feet. And above range, I'm going to write yes, because that's the unit of measure. Very good. Atmospheres. This is a key step. It helps me know what does it mean in the real world. Fantastic. Guess what we're going to do next? What's number 3 say? Reread, so highlight this box. Reread to figure out if any given information restricts or limits. Restriction means that there's a limit that restricts or limits the domain or the range. So go ahead and reread. Yes, we read it once, but now we need to reread with a different focus. We're looking for something. Can you reread and find something that limits my feet or atmospheres? Go ahead and read again. Let me know when you see it. I'm looking for a restriction or a limit on either feet or atmospheres. If you want to hold off on highlighting it until we all agree, this is going to be a master set of notes for you, and we're going to refer to it often. Who's got it? Jose? Yes, very good. I look right here, and it tells me, it recommended that novice, what does novice mean? If you're a novice, what does that mean? Beginner. If you're a beginner diver, you shouldn't go any deeper than this. Is this a restriction on the domain or range? Because many of you are able to tell me where this is, but what is this a restriction on? See, I got both answers. I've got some say domain, some say range. So here's the key. We're going to go, look right here. Yeah, so this is about feet, right? So this is the importance of putting these labels. Which is about feet, domain or the range? Domain. So that is how I know restriction. This is what you, so highlight this and then write restriction on domain and highlight that statement, restriction on domain. Highlight no more than 427 feet. I'm going to highlight it too. Restriction on domain. And again, we know that because this is talking about feet, and domain is about feet. So how am I going to write my domain? Should I say X? Do I have X here? D, such that the bar, what's over here? 0. How do you know it's 0? Very good. I'm given the max. I'm told 427 feet is my max, but I'm not told a minimum. If this said like 200 to 427, I would put 200 right here. But I don't. So what's common sense wise, like logic, what's the smallest depth possible? Which means 0, which means you're where relative to the water? On top, right on top. Very good. Let me update my highlighting. Your paper should have this highlighted. I thought I was going to fix it. Uh-oh, and I have to be careful. Ha! See, it straightened it out. How awesome was that? Okay, so we have reread. Now, we circled and we wrote it. Yay, this represents my domain. But we actually need to do that. So write the domain if that's what's restricted. Or the range, if that's what's given. So you're going to be given one or the other. In this case, we're given the domain. Now, on the quizzes, I noticed a ton of people got this far and stopped. So this is where I want to mentally help you keep going. This is one of the most important steps. We need to decide. We need to decide. What do we need to decide? We need to decide if I have domain. What's the domain all about? Which values? X. If I have the domain, which is my X values, what do I need? Which is the Y's, which is also in general is called the range. So if I have the domain, need range. Which you said is which values? The opposite of this, if I have what? Range. So let's say I'm starting with my Y values, because that's possible. What do I then need? I need X, which in general is the domain. This is the crucial step here, is making this choice, or making this decision. Where am I and what do I need? So which of these applies to us right now? The top or the bottom? Yes, I have my domain, so that means I need what? The range. Good. Now we're ready to do some math, okay? Now we're going to use algebra to calculate. Oh, let me highlight. Follow my own directions here. Now we're going to use algebra to calculate the needed values. And there's two lines here. This is one line and this is another line. Because, again, we have two possibilities. So let's start with this first possibility if you have the domain. So let's say that if I have domain, and in your notes, if you want to say if I have the domain, that's fine. But my marker up here is a little chunkier, takes up a little more room. If I have the domain, what did you say that I need? Need range. So what does that mean I'm going to do? If you have the domain, which values do you have? X. Sub. What does sub stand for? Substitute. Substitute in X to find Y. So if I have the domain, it means I need the range. For that to happen, I'm going to sub in the X to find Y. My other scenario is I have what? If I have not a trick question, the range. If I have the range, we already agreed, need what? Domain. So what am I going to write right here? What's going to happen? What has to happen? Reason on that. If you have the range, which values do you have? So you're going to sub in what? The Y values to find yes. Very good. Let's do that. In this case, we have our domain. So what does that mean we need to go find? Okay. So we have made that decision. Check. Right here. So now we're going to do math. Did you notice is where I'm pointing, this step, is there any math involved? No. How about here? No. Here? Nope. Here? There's math involved here? No. Look how much of this is all just what needs to be happening in your head. Mental decisions that actually lead us to the math. So if we can all get on the same page with how we think about this, it will really help as we move forward. And you're going to have this in your notes as a reference. So that's why I'm saying it's very important. Okay? So let's do this. You've all told me that I need my Y values. So I have the domain, need the range. We're going to substitute in X. In this case, I don't have X's. We're working with what letter? D. I have D values. So how am I going to use this model? What am I going to do? What am I going to write? Think of our function notation stuff from yesterday. Plug stuff in. I agree. So what should I tell me in words what I should write right now? Careful. What should we plug in first, just for order's sake? Good. Instead of P parentheses 0, we're going to use the language P of 0. P of 0 equals. Yep. Good job. Find that. Let's do that. Let's do 0.03 times 0 plus 1. Yes, because I get 0 plus 1 equals 1. What did you just substitute in to get this answer? 0. Watch the screen. I want everyone to go over here and check off 0. You just took care of 0. Check it off. Check. Done. What do I need to do next? Good job. Can someone tell me in words what that's going to say? What am I going to write? Oh, Mary, let somebody else. Yes, you were fully right on the last one. Who can try this one? Tim, you want to try? You're going to try this. Ready? So instead of plugging in 0, we want to plug in our 427. So I'm going to say P, instead of parenthesis, P. How do I read that? How would I read this out loud? What was that 2-letter word? P of 0. So instead of that, P, there you go, P of 427 equals, go, keep going. Right here, read this. Oh, I think I'm running out of space. Keep going, I'm listening. Alright, my math is getting a little squished, so I'm going to move it over. He's on the right track. Come on. 0.03 times 427 plus 1. Good job for not forgetting the plus 1. Let's find out what that is. Try it. Don't watch me. Let's get those calculators. Emmanuel? 13 point. 12 point, okay, let me back up. So you get 12.81 first, right? 12.81 plus 1 is 13.81. Good job. We'll let it be. We want to be as exact as possible. So let's leave it. So what did you just plug in to get that answer? So check it off. And did you just finish finding your range? Yes, you did. What's your range? Okay, in set notation, I'm not going to put a y right here. What should I put right here? P of D. Can someone please answer that, Ms. J's room, student speaking? What to what for my range? 1. Okay. So instead of using my y values, I'm going to stick with my notation and using P of D. We need to get used to this. This is not going away. We got to graduate from x's and y's to using whatever my question gives me. If it helps, feel free to always just put a little x and a little y to keep it straight. But in terms of our notation, we really want to graduate to what we're given. Yes, Lucas? Okay, fantastic. Number 1 is done. So what you're going to do right now is turn the page and apply this thinking, right? Steps 1 through 4 is all about how you think. The math doesn't come in till the way end. So apply these 4 strategies right now in order on our next question. Go for it. So right now we're taking these steps and applying it to our next question. We've all had a chance to read, so let's talk about what you've done so far. What have you done so far? Talk to me. Good job. So Sosa is underlining this. He sees that M of T is defined right here as height of the snow. Great. I'm going to move that down a little bit if I can. Nope, it's being difficult. Okay. So height of the snow, M of T, and then you also underlined T is time in days. Fantastic. T, time and days. So now I can take what are underlined. So this one is nice because it actually gave me both. It tells me T is time and days, M of T, height of the snow. How is the height of the snow being measured? Good job. What should I do next? What am I supposed to do next? Something before then. It's a small little step, but it's very important. It's got that word that starts with a U. We defined the variables. Units. Where am I supposed to put the units? So above domain, what am I going to write? The units, the unit of measure. Yes, this is about time, but specifically days, and above range, inches. And the reason that that's crucial is a lot of you had said next to look for the restriction. Once you find that restriction, if you have already labeled these, you will automatically know, was I given the domain or the range? So yes, I agree. Now we're going to go look for a restriction. Does anybody see that? Where that is? Who's got it? Go ahead. Good job. Total height of the snow, 52 inches. And as nice as it would be to have an infinite amount of snow, because imagine how many snow days we'd have. Although, side note, I would rather get out earlier for a longer summer. So, like 1 or 2 is cool, but let's not have any more than that this winter. We can't have an infinite amount of snow. Every winter, there's only a certain amount, and in this case for Boston, 52 inches. Is this is what I found in an article. If you can find, so my saying it was higher than that, find me what you think the max is, and I'll change it for next year. Is this a restriction for the, you found a restriction, but is it a restriction for the domain or the range? The domain? The range? How am I going to know? This is inches. Range has to do with inches. So I know that this is restriction on the range. And just like we highlighted it on the front, I want you to highlight this on the back. I want this note page to stick out above everything else we've done these past couple days because it brings all of that learning together. In this section and in general in the real world, yes. Because in the real world, his question was, is there always going to be a restriction? If we think about real world scenarios, very little goes on forever and ever relative to what that person is doing. So yes, time goes on forever in general, but if somebody's physically doing something, are they ever going to be doing that literally forever, or do they do it for a fixed amount of time? A fixed amount of time. Diving. You don't dive to an infinite depth. You only go so far. So everything in the real world has limits, and that's what this is all about. Great question. Okay, we're gonna come back to B, because this question threw lots of people off. I'm going to come full circle to that. What's my next step? Identified, I wrote it's a restriction on the range, but now where does that information belong? What do I do next? Yes, decide. Does it go in the domain or the range spot? Yes. What should I write right here? How is y being written with function notation for this problem? M of t, such that, remember that's what that bar means, what to what for the range? Good? Yes. Yes, and now the deciding continues. I've decided where to write it. Now I need to decide, do I have x and I need to find y? Or do I have y and I need to go find x? Yes, that has to stay fixed in your brain because it's going to affect what we're about to write. If I have my y values and I have to go find x, what's the math going to look like? What am I going to write right now? Maya? $52, yep. Great question. Hold on one second. So Myri just asked, you're not going to put m of 0? Don't write this. There is a huge difference between writing this and what we just wrote. If I wrote m of 0, I'm saying that 0 is an x value or a y value? X value. Remember, function notation, f of x. So on the front, we had x values to plug in, right? We were plugging in domain values. So p of 0, p of 427. These are x values. Do you have x values over here? No. You have y values. So we have to remember m of t is the same thing as writing what? True? M of t is the same as f of x, is the same as what in general? Back last year, what did you always write instead of f of x? Y equals. Oop. Thank you. There we go. Okay. So, m of t means y. It means the same thing. So if I have something to plug in for y, it's going to go into this output spot, which is why she correctly said to write 0 equals. There is no m of anything. That does not apply to this question. We are literally plugging in for that output, and we're going to go solve for t. How am I going to solve for t? Go for it. Subtract 52 and keep going. Find t, please. Ooh, we shouldn't be getting anything too... I mean, it's not little, but it shouldn't be huge. Okay, by a huge number, if you mean it's a decimal, yes, it is a decimal answer. Let me know what you get. I know Myri's got an answer. Who else has it? We all should be doing this division. I'm going to wait, Myri. Hold on. Somebody else. I've heard Myri's voice a lot, which is fantastic, but I genuinely would like to hear from other people. Hold on. People are still working. I see people working. We got to wait. What'd you get? Nice job. 37 point... Is it 0.14? So I think if you got a negative 37.14, I think you maybe forgot to divide by a negative 1.4. Check what you wrote. How many days would this, if I was just asking for a real world answer, how many days would that be? Is it 37? I want the number of days. Just number of days. Why 38? Yes. Because this is 37 days and a little bit. So that and a little bit is going to be what day? 38th day. Side note on that. Okay. So what did I just plug in? So what should I go check off? Yes. We just plugged in 0. Check it off. Check. What do we need to plug in next? I heard it. 52. Let's go ahead and plug in 52. Tim is in a second. Tim's going to share with us what he got. I keep on writing a 2 instead of a T. Let's fix that. Notice how I put a little tail on the end of the T's that prevents it from looking like a plus sign. Tim, what'd you get as an answer? What'd you get? 0. Nice job. Who else got 0? Fantastic. We should be getting 0. So what did I just plug in, and so what should I go check off? Plugged in 52, check it off. What's my range? Oh, wow, sorry. Domain. We just found domain. What's my domain? Shouldn't be D, should be T. Thank you, good catch. T is from what to what? Oh, go in order. 0. Let's use our exact value, 37.14. I have found my domain. Yay. Now let's address this real world question. It said how long until there is no snow? No snow is how much snow? So you're asking when is m of t equal to 0? Did you already just figure that out? When? What's the answer? What's the math answer? 37. Which we said would be how many days? That's how many days it's going to take 52 inches of snow to melt. In a sentence, it will take 38 days for there to be no snow. So if you would like to hold off on doing this question and do domain and range first, you can use this answer, or vice versa. If we had done this first, it would have counted as plugging in for 0, whichever makes you more comfortable. Yes? Okay, good. Now, what are we going to do here that we didn't do before? Graph. Now, there's something that happened when I was doing the notes a couple days ago. I actually made a mistake. I had told you that it's okay to just match. When we plugged in 0, we got 1. Yes? And when we plugged in 427, we got 13.81. That works for this. Watch my pointer. When we plugged in 0, we got out 1. So if you were graphing this, yes, the ordered pair would be 0, 1. And what would the ordered pair be over here? So that matches, right? 427, 13.81. But what I said is not always true, which is why I want to fix it right now. Because check this out. Is this X or Y? Careful. This is Y. So what X value, or what, when I put X in air quotes, what T value came out of this? So my ordered pair is 37.14, comma, 0. That's 1. And what ordered pair will you get over here? Yes, 0, 52. Let's check. Is 0, 0 correct? Look at this. Is 0, 0 either of these points? Not a trick question. Did we get 0, 0 when we just wrote either of these points? No. So that whole just match these up will not always work. So instead, I want us to use our algebra to get our ordered pairs like you just did there. So under graph, let's write that down. Use your algebra to write two ordered pairs. Just like you did right there, and you did right there. That's a safe bet. I would say 90% of the time it does work, the matchy-matchy thing we had talked about. But here it would clearly fail us. So fail-safe, 100% of the time your points will come out right if you use your algebra to get your points. So I have this blank canvas of a graph. What do I need to get onto this graph? Talk to me about that. But how do you know where to graph things? I don't see anything on here. Okay, good. Let's start with labels. Label the axes. What label goes down here? Day. So time in days. What's going to go over here? Height of snow. In inches, I heard. Good job. Okay, so we've labeled the axes. Check. What's next? Yes, we have to, well, to plot points, we have to figure out what we're going to count by. Does anyone remember what that's called from last year? Decide on a, starts with an S. Let me start you off. SC. Scale. There we go. Now, I saw some people get stuck right here. To decide on a scale, I'm going to put something in like some air quotes because it's more of a thought than a step. X values go from what to what? True, left to right, but I mean numbers. And to figure that out, look at your domain. What do your x values go from? Okay, in our other classes, I did finish this graph with the steps on what I'm talking about right here. So I will finish the video describing how to finish the graph. And it would be great for you to go online and finish watching that as notes. Whoa, don't go. I haven't passed out homework yet. Go online to check out this video, and let me pass out the homework. Nice job today.